The most successful cult leader in American history didn't recruit broken people. He recruited nurses, lawyers, teachers, journalists, people with degrees, with careers, with families who loved them. And on November 18th, 1978, 918 of them died in a jungle in Guyana, most of them voluntarily. The leader's name was Jim Jones. And the terrifying question isn't, how did he do it? The terrifying question is, why were the smart ones the easiest to convince?
Welcome to Dark Psyche. Last video, we broke down 7 manipulation tactics used on you every day. This one goes deeper. Because cults aren't just religious groups in the middle of nowhere. The psychological system they use, the exact same system, is being applied right now in relationships, in corporations, in political movements, and in online communities. And research shows that people with higher intelligence and stronger empathy are more vulnerable. Not less. Today, we're going to walk through the 8-stage psychological process that transforms a rational, educated person into someone who will abandon everything they know. Stage 6 is the one most people never escape. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why. Every cult begins the same way. You don't walk into a room and get handed a manifesto. That's not how it works. You walk into a room and feel, for the first time in a long time, completely seen. They know your name within minutes. They ask about your life like they genuinely care. The people around you are warm, enthusiastic, welcoming. It feels like coming home to a family you didn't know you had. This is called love bombing, and it's not accidental. It's the first stage of a deliberate psychological system. The reason it works so effectively on intelligent people is this: smart people have high standards. They've been let down before. They're used to being the most analytical person in the room, which often means they feel isolated. So when a group offers unconditional belonging, the intelligent mind doesn't activate skepticism. It activates relief. Jim Jones was famous for this. Former members described their first encounter as, "the most loved I've ever felt in my life." NXIVM, the cult disguised as a self-improvement organization that recruited Hollywood actresses and executives, had initiation processes designed to make members feel they had finally found people who truly understood them. The love bombing phase doesn't last forever. But by the time it ends, they don't need it anymore. Because stage 2 has already begun. Slowly. Carefully. Methodically. The group begins to pull you away from everyone outside it. Not through force, through logic. Your old friends don't understand what you're learning here. Your family is stuck in old patterns of thinking. Spending time with outsiders will hold back your growth. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like they're protecting you. What they're actually doing is eliminating every outside perspective that might make you question what you're being told. This is called milieu control, controlling the environment. And it's not just physical. It's informational, emotional, and social. A 2018 study from the University of California found that cult members who had been isolated for more than 6 months showed measurable changes in how they processed external information. Specifically, they began to dismiss contradictory evidence without engaging with it. The brain, deprived of diverse input, stops knowing how to evaluate reality from the outside. And that is exactly the point. Here's something most people don't realize about cults. They don't just change what you believe. They change how you think. And the most powerful tool for this is language. Every cult develops its own vocabulary. New words for ordinary concepts. Phrases that only members understand. Terms that are used to explain away doubt, silence questions, and categorize the world. In Scientology, skeptics are called suppressive persons, a term that immediately frames critical thinking as a form of psychological sickness. In NXIVM, members who questioned the leader were accused of having an ethical breach, their own moral system turned against them. When you speak a new language, you begin to think in that language. And a language designed by a cult is a language that has no words for doubt, no grammar for dissent, and no sentence structure that leads anywhere except deeper in. This is why cult survivors often describe leaving as learning to think again. They're not being poetic. They are describing a literal cognitive process of rebuilding a vocabulary that allows for uncertainty. One of the most quietly devastating tools in cult psychology is the use of confession. In almost every high-control group, members are encouraged, or required, to share their deepest secrets, their past mistakes, their most private shames. It feels like therapy. Like trust. Like genuine intimacy. It is a trap. Because once you've confessed your darkest truths to the group, once they hold your secrets, leaving becomes terrifying. What happens to that information if you leave? Who gets told? What do they do with it? This is called information control through vulnerability. It's not unique to cults. It's used in abusive relationships. In high-pressure corporate cultures. In political organizations. The genius of it is that the victim participates willingly. They confess because they want to. Because they feel safe. And the moment they feel safe is the moment the information becomes a chain. If you recognize any of these patterns, in a group, in a relationship, in a community you belong to, that feeling of recognition is important. Pay attention to it. Subscribe to Dark Psyche and hit the bell. Because the next 3 stages are the ones nobody talks about. And they explain why leaving a cult is one of the hardest things a human being can do. At some point in every cult's evolution, the world divides into 2 categories. The enlightened. And everyone else. Us. And them. The outside world isn't just different, it's dangerous. Corrupt. Spiritually dead. Morally inferior. The people who love you and haven't joined are either to be pitied or feared. This binary thinking serves 2 purposes. First, it makes loyalty to the group feel like moral courage. You're not following blindly, you're choosing the right side. Second, it makes the cost of leaving feel catastrophic. To leave is to join them. To become the enemy. To lose not just a community but your entire identity and moral framework. Heaven's Gate members, who believed they were about to ascend to a spacecraft hidden behind the Hale-Bopp comet in 1997, described the outside world as a contaminated space they had graduated beyond. 39 of them died together. They weren't coerced at gunpoint. They were people who had been convinced, over years, that staying was enlightenment and leaving was death, not physical death, but the death of everything that made them them. This is the stage most people never escape. And it is the most psychologically brutal. It begins when your own experience, your own memory, your own perception of events, starts to be overridden by the group's doctrine. You remember something happening a certain way. The group says it happened differently. Or that your interpretation is wrong. Or that your feelings about it are a sign of weakness, spiritual failure, lack of commitment. Over time, you stop trusting yourself. Not because you're stupid. But because the human brain, when confronted with repeated social pressure from trusted sources, updates its memories. This is not a metaphor. It is a documented neurological process. Elizabeth Loftus's decades of research on false memories show that confident memories can be systematically replaced by external suggestion, especially in high-trust environments. Doctrine over person means that when reality and the group's teaching conflict, reality loses. And once a person reaches this stage, they are no longer capable of evaluating the group from the outside. They don't have access to an outside. Their entire frame for understanding experience is the doctrine. This is why cult survivors, even after leaving, often spend years unable to trust their own perception of events. The cult doesn't end when you walk out the door. Every cult has a mechanism for silencing the internal voice of doubt. Prayer. Chanting. Repetitive physical movement. Meditation focused on group-approved content. Speaking in tongues. Repeating affirmations. These are not spiritual practices in this context. They are interruption technologies. The moment a member begins to think critically, begins to notice a contradiction, feel a doubt, ask a dangerous question, the thought-stopping technique kicks in. The doubt is labeled, "This is your ego. This is spiritual weakness. This is the outside world trying to pull you back. Don't listen." And because the technique produces genuine psychological relief, because the anxiety of doubt is genuinely reduced by the ritual, the brain learns to reach for it automatically. Neuroscientist Jill Bolt Taylor's research on automatic brain patterns confirms what cult survivors describe. Once a thought-stopping pattern is deeply enough reinforced, the brain begins to execute it before conscious awareness can engage. The doubt never gets to become a question. The question never gets to become a conversation. The conversation that might lead someone out, never happens. Here is the darkest truth about cult psychology. Most people don't leave because they don't want to leave. Even when they can. After months or years of love bombing, isolation, loaded language, confession traps, us versus them thinking, doctrine replacing memory, and thought stopping, the member has nothing left outside the group. Their relationships are inside. Their identity is inside. Their sense of morality is inside. Their understanding of reality is inside. Leaving doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like annihilation. This is what researchers call the sunk cost of the soul. The psychological investment in the group has become so total that leaving means admitting, to yourself, that years of your life, relationships, and possibly every major decision you've made were based on a lie. The human mind resists this not out of stupidity. It resists it because it would mean the collapse of the entire structure that gives life meaning. And this is why the most intelligent, the most educated, the most rational members are often the last ones out. Because they are the best at constructing arguments for why staying makes sense. Their intelligence, the thing that should protect them, becomes the final weapon used against them. Jim Jones. NXIVM. Heaven's Gate. Scientology. The People's Temple. Different names. Different beliefs. Different decades. The same 8 stages. Every single time. And here is what you need to understand, this system does not require robes, rituals, or religion. It requires only this, a group that offers belonging, controls information, rewards loyalty, and punishes doubt. Look around at the groups in your life that fit that description. And ask yourself which stage you're in. Subscribe to Dark Psyche. Because in our next video, we're going to break down how this exact system is being used right now, not in jungles or compounds, but in the most powerful organizations on Earth. You think you'd recognize it? That's what they all thought.